I want to be able to hear God, and not because I'm preoccupied.
Challenge me!
You got to be willing to do what God tells you. I want to talk about God room and what that represents to us today. And I'm going to use a familiar story. It's usually talked about during Christmas time, and it deals with Joseph and it deals with Mary. And it says in Luke 2 in verse number 6 and verse number 7, while Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem, the time came for her to have the baby, speaking of Jesus. She gave birth to her first son. She wrapped him up well and laid him in a box or a manger where cattle are fed. She put him there. Why did she have to put him in the manger where the cattle feed? Because the Bible says that there was no room at the inn. They went knocking on that innkeeper's hotel and said, "My wife is pregnant. She's due any minute. I see that you have hotel rooms to rent. I'm not asking you for it free. I'll pay whatever it takes. Can you allow us to rent a room from you?" And the innkeeper said, "Sorry, no vacancies. I'm all full. I can't put you anywhere. I have no more room for you, but you can go into the manger. You could go into the farm or you can go into the shed." And that's where Jesus was born. I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Have you ever had to make room for someone on a crowded couch? Maybe you've been in a crowded elevator and you kind of scooted a little bit to allow them to come on in with their suitcase. Maybe you've been on a train or a bus and you scooted to allow somebody to have space next to you. You made room for them. Have you ever said, "I don't have no more room for that stuff. Where am I going to put all this stuff? This house is filled, the garage is filled. How am I going to make room for this person in my life? My life is all filled. My life is all tied up. I have my 5 friends and I don't need a 6th one in my life." You know, recently, a couple of years ago, somebody really blessed me with an amazing gift, an extravagant gift. I was overwhelmed, and I have to put it in the garage, but you know, the garage is filled with all kinds of stuff. And I've learned something after being married 32 years to the same woman. I don't just do things because I want to do them. I have to ask permission. And so I needed to ask her, would she move some of her stuff so that we could put this gift into the garage? And she so graciously, on a whole weekend, she went and moved and arranged the garage so that this gift could go into the garage. We made room for this gift. What is the thought that I'm talking about today? What kind of room or space do you allow or allocate for Jesus in your life? Do you give him a corner of your life, a niche in your life, a section, an attic, a basement, a garage? Do you give him a box, a cabinet? Do you give him a drawer? Do you give him once a week of space or room in your life? Maybe you're an individual that has restricted areas in your life where you don't allow Jesus to go. "Jesus, you can't go into this room. Jesus, you can't enter this space in my life. You know what, Jesus, don't talk about my money, don't talk about my relationship, don't talk about my sex life, but everything else is accessible to you." I don't know if you've ever been to Hearst Castle. It's a great place to visit. William Randolph Hearst, the great millionaire of his time, and newspaper and guru and magazines and so on and so forth. And so it's a great place to go. And places like that are museums, they have these roped off areas. You can't go beyond the roped off areas. They are restricted. So you have to just stay along the path that's within the ropes. You can't go beyond the ropes. And so many of us have that relationship with Christ where we say, "I'm going to give you this much, but I can't give you beyond the line." I asked that person one time, a tour guide, who gets to go beyond the ropes? Because there's so many rooms you can't see. You want to turn your head and see what's in this room. There's prized possessions, antique stuff, things worth a lot of money. They said, we allow the family has the liberty to come. The Hertz family, descendants from the Hertz family, they can come, and we shut down Hertz Castle and the tour and the museum, just depending on where they want to go. They have the freedom to touch anything, to sleep in the beds, and to do anything because they have they have access to everything. I don't know about you. That's the kind of relationship I want with Christ. I want him to have total access into my life, into my past, into my hurts, into my pains, into my issues, into my secrets, into my challenges. God, you have the freedom to jump over the ropes, go beyond the ropes of my life to address me. God room in your life, making room for God in your life. What does that look like? It's when God begins to move on your heart. What does that look like? It's when all of a sudden you feel this uncomfortable feeling, this need to do something feeling. It's this feeling where God is setting you up. It's a feeling where your heart begins to beat fast. All these are descriptions of a conviction or a compulsion, an overwhelmingness of something I need to do in this moment. That's when God is beginning to move, or he's asking you to make room for him. It's when he's beginning to push you, or he's beginning to press against you. God is asking you to make room for him. It's like your phone. Your phone has a ringer, but then sometimes you want to put your phone on silence. And when you put your phone on silence, it still vibrates. I don't hear the ring, but I feel it. And what a great example of making room for God. I don't necessarily hear something, I just feel it. I just feel it. One of these times came to me about a little over 6 years ago. We had just built our church building, this wonderful property that we have our services at, and we'd only been here about 6 months, and I had heard about a school named Upland Christian. They're from Upland, the city of Upland, and their school was about 30 years old, and they were being displaced from their campus. They had nowhere to go. We had heard that they had gone to our Utica property, but it did not fit their needs. And so they were coming and asking audience with me so that we could consider leasing property to them. Well, my answer was no. My answer was no because it was within our vision to have our own school. My answer was no because we had just been in this building 6 months and everything was pristine, and I just didn't want all these nicks and rips and cuts and stains. The third reason is because I had just got diagnosed with cancer. And I didn't want that burden and that labor in my life, that emotional stress. And so just to be nice, I entertained audience and I gave them a meeting. And we sat there and they were on the hot seat for about 30 minutes. And I was trying to justify why and who and what. And what are you trying to do? I've heard everything. What do you want to say differently that I have not heard? Well, 30 minutes into it, because I have a low attention disorder that I can't be around anybody too long or do anything real long, I got to move on. I was one of these little kids that was always sent to the principal's office, always getting in trouble. 30 minutes, I'm done with the meeting. That's about all I can do. But I asked them one question. If I say no to you, where are you going to go? What's going to happen with the school? One man spoke up. He said, we'll probably have to split the campuses in 2 locations. And another person said, excuse me, let me interrupt you. That's not true. We've gone through that scenario. Sir, he called me sir. He said, if you say no to us, we will continue to exist. The school will not be a school anymore, and those children will be displaced. At that moment, I felt God room. God was pushing me. They were on the hot seat. The limelight was on them, but God changed that. I was on the hot seat and the limelight was on me. And God was saying in my heart, what are you going to do about this problem? You think that you've built that church only for your people to have church on Sunday morning. No, there was a bigger picture that I had. There was a purpose behind it, and it was for this moment. And how are you going to react to it, Diego? At that particular moment, because I know enough about God, I said, you know what? The logistical stuff we will figure out, the lawyers, the contracts, and all that. You have a home. And all these adults wept and they cried like babies in that room. That's God room in your life.
If you are experiencing a hopeless situation or simply desire prayer, please feel free to give us a call. We are here because we care. It's time to get real. Come as you are.
Maybe you're familiar with the movie in 2009. Where Sandra Bullock won an Academy Award for the movie Blind Side, where it was a true story about the Toohey family. Leanne was her name. And they adopted a 17-year-old African-American, Michael Orr, who on one Thanksgiving, the family on a rainy day saw this boy alone walking the streets. She stopped the car and said, "Turn around." And that one conversation led to that boy moving in, going to a Christian school, graduating from Ole Miss, to becoming a professional football player on the Ravens, to winning a championship. All because somebody felt God moving on their heart, stopped the direction they were going, made importance and priority to what they were feeling, and turned around and impacted a life. Is that possible? That could happen for you and I? Yeah. In 2 Kings, it tells the story of a woman and her husband who made room for God in their lives. They're just like you. They had busy lives, they had jobs, they had responsibilities. But in the form of Elisha, they're going to reach out and make room for God in this story. The Shunammite woman and her husband. 2 Kings, the 4th chapter, and verse 8. Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was as often as he passed by, he would turn there and eat some food. Whenever Elisha would go through the city to preach, to be used by God, to do his business and his affairs, she would ask him, "Why don't you come as a weary traveler, as a preacher, and allow me to cook some enchiladas for you, some tostadas for you, some burrito, and some refried beans, and I'll make the fresh tortillas for you." So he said he would. And so he'd come by there regularly at her house, and she'd cook for him. Now watch this. And she said to her husband, "Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God." She tested. It wasn't just irresponsible. She just opened her life and her home. She tested the character of this man and found him to be true. "Who passes by us regularly. Please let us make a small upper room on the wall. We want to build an addition. Or we got this empty room in our house that nobody sleeps in. And let us put a bed there, and let us put a table there, and let us put a chair there, and let us put a lampstand there. So will be whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there." They made a room. They made room for him. "And it happened one day that he came there, and he turned into that room and lay down there. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, 'Call this Shunammite woman.' When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, 'Say now to her, look, you have been concerned for us with all this care. You made room for us. What can I do for you?'" You know, all of us want God to come to us and say, "What can I do for you?" How many of us wouldn't want God to come to us and say, "What can I do for you?" But it's what precedes that gets and warrants this, the "what can I do for you?" She sacrificed. She made room. She allowed herself and her husband to do something extraordinary for God so that God now comes to her and says, what can I do for you? What a great definition of making room. God, what can I do for you? I mean, what a great prayer every day to pray to God. God, what can I do for you? Not always, God, what can you do for me? How many of you know that's modern Christianity? That's the consumer Christianity that exists today. It's often the selfish Christianity that's preached today. Lord, what can you do for? What can you bless me with, God? What can you answer for me? What can you give me? What a new revelation in Christendom in our relationship with Christ for us to say, Lord, what can I do for you? Because you've already done so much for me in dying on the cross, giving me heaven, and delivering me from hell. What can I do for you? Here's some things I want you to recognize in this story that talk about making room. As this woman and her husband made room, the thought is this: there will never be a convenient time to make room. There will never be a convenient time. Was it convenient for the innkeeper? Probably not. How about this? Was it convenient for the Samaritan? No, it wasn't. Was it convenient for Nehemiah? Nehemiah was just twiddling his thumbs and says, you know what, I ain't got nothing to do, so I'm ready if God talks to me at any time. No, it doesn't happen that way. Was it convenient for the Shunammite woman? No, it's not. And when God comes to ask you to make room for him in your life, for someone or for something, it's not going to be a convenient time. Ecclesiastes says this. I love this scripture here in Ecclesiastes. It says, if you wait for perfect conditions, you will get nothing done. You will not get anything done. And how many of you know we're like that? We like to procrastinate. Lord, this is not a good time. Maybe when I'm retired, and maybe when I paid off my bills, and maybe when I'm not in debt, God, and maybe when I've regained my health back, and maybe when I'm moved on from this, then I'll make myself available, then I'll start doing. And the Bible says if you wait for the perfect conditions, you will never get nothing done. How about the story in Matthew where Jesus said, I was hungry and you wouldn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was a stranger and in prison and you didn't come to visit me. Why? Why didn't that happen? Because there are hungry people all around us. There's thirsty people symbolically all around us. There's naked, destitute strangers, people in prison every day around us. Why don't we react to them? Because this is not a good time, God. See, here's what I'm talking about when I talk about making room for God. It will always challenge your comfortability. It will always challenge your comfortability. God, I don't like this. God, I'm not used to this. God, this is not easy. God, you know what, God? I am not comfortable going to this person and sharing my faith. God, I am not comfortable going to this person that offended me and tell them I forgive you. I'm not comfortable talking to this stranger, telling them, do you have a need in your life? Can I pray for you? I'm not comfortable leading this small group. I'm not comfortable raising someone else's children in children's church and volunteering. I'm not comfortable with knocking on the new neighbor who moved in the neighborhood and welcome them. I'm not comfortable with that. If we're going to make room for others, then we've got to be willing to be interrupted. You got to be willing to be interrupted. If you go back and you look at the life of Jesus, look at how many times he was interrupted, going in one way, but he stopped and made this person's need a priority. And how many of you know there are some people that you don't want to interrupt them. They say on their face, don't look at your neighbor. They say on their face, do not interrupt me. I am not available. It's the difference between a smile and a frown. It's the difference between an open hand and a folded hand. It's the difference between someone raising their hand, I volunteer, and someone says, I ain't got a clue what's going on. It's the difference.
Hey, Hey, are you looking to get inspired? Please visit our website and subscribe to our daily inspirational messages from Diego Mesa. Once you subscribe, you will be receiving real inspirational and encouraging messages every day.
The word abide. The word abide means to remain, to dwell, and to live. And I want you to recognize Jesus does not want to visit your life. He wants to stay. Jesus doesn't want to visit. Jesus wants to stay. Jesus is looking for a place to stay, not visit. Abide, remain, live, and dwell. Jesus doesn't want you to visit him on Sunday morning for an hour and a half, and you say, I'll catch you later next week. Well, I'm not sure. I got an appointment here. I got to do this. I'll see you when I see you. You stay there, and I'll catch you later. But I'm just saying, God doesn't want to be visited. He wants to stay. How many of you know there's a difference between someone staying and someone visiting? When someone wants to visit you, they have a sweater or a coat over their arm. When someone wants to stay, they have a suitcase and a U-Haul. How many of you had family members or friends that wanted to visit, but the visit turned into a stay? Don't raise your hand. And Jesus just doesn't want to visit. He wants to move in, and he wants to say, where is my bed? Where is my table? Where is my chair? And where is my lampstand? Because I'm not going to share your bed, and I'm not going to share your table, and I'm not going to share your chair. If you really want me, and you love me, and you think I'm meaningful in your life, then give me my own bed, give me my own chair, give me my own table, and give me my own lampstand. It's not to be shared. It's yours. And how many times does Jesus have to share things with others and with our things and our stuff in our lives? And if there's any time left, then you can sleep there. You can eat there. See, I get a great picture of this. She didn't want him to visit. She had the visit. The visit was when he came over for the burritos. She said, I like this guy. He's got something I need. I don't want the guy to visit anymore. I want him to stay. I'm going to build his own room, and I'm going to put furniture in it. I'm going to furnish it, and I'm going to put a bed. Why? What's the bed? The bed is a place of rest. What is the chair? The chair is a place of authority. What is the table? A place of fellowship and conversation. And what is the lampstand? The lampstand is a place of light, illumination, and direction. She's saying this. I don't want you to visit. I want you to stay. I want you to rest in my life. I want you to be the authority in my life. I want to have conversations and communion and meals with you. And last of all, I want you to be the light of my direction. I want you to be my counselor. I want to go to you to answer my life's issues. Do you want him to visit? Or do you want him to stay? I just read recently about James Barnett, a young, good-looking young man from Boynton Beach, Florida. He graduated from Florida State. He started an aspiring career at J.P. Morgan Chase, where he was almost making 6 digits. He went to a trip. He was having these God moments where God was moving upon his heart, and he felt like he needed to go on a missions trip. He had never been on a missions trip. So he took a week's vacation. He went on a missions trip to Nicaragua. And he went to Nicaragua, and he saw all these orphans. He saw all these street kids. He saw all these homeless people eating out of dumps. And what he did, he went home and he did something radical. He quit his aspiring job. And he felt that pressed by God. And for the next 2 years of his life, he went homeless. He wanted to walk in the shoes of a homeless person. He wanted God to speak to him, and he wanted God to make a difference in his life. Because he was a graphic artist by profession, he made these t-shirts and he'd sell them to earn a little money so that he could eat and helped people with socks and ponchos and blankets that were homeless. They gave him a name. They called him Mr. Butter because he spread love like a butter. After 2 years, because he felt like it was only 2 years that God wanted him to do that, he was hired as a youth pastor in Florida, and he started a nonprofit organization where he helps orphans in Kenya. I'm not asking you to be the Tuohys. I'm not asking you to be James Barnett. I'm not asking you to be Diego Mesa. I'm only asking you, when God moves on your heart, will you stop and turn around and do what God asks you to do? Father, I pray now that we would have the courage to recognize when those moments come in our lives, God. And no matter how terrifying and no matter how scary and no matter the interruption and inconvenience, may we yield to it, God. We thank you today, oh God. There are a lot of people around us. They're always hurting, naked, destitute, incarcerated, saved and unsaved, oh God. But we really want to be that vessel to do things that we've never done before to your glory, God. We honor you today that we will be able to hear you more and more. In Jesus' name, amen.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between Christianity and religion. See, religion is this self-effort, this self-initiative of man to try to reach up to heaven to reach God. Where Christianity is God coming down to this earth through the cross to reach you and I. Imagine a giant chasm between you and God. There is no way that you and I can reach God through that giant chasm. That chasm represents sin. That chasm represents defiance and rebellion. That chasm can represent evilness and perversion and all kinds of lifestyle issues. But then put that cross between the chasm. That's what Jesus is. Jesus became the one that fills that chasm so that you and I now can cross over, so that you and I are no longer strangers, as the Bible says, or enemies, or alienated, or foreigners of God. We walk into a place now of forgiveness and grace and love and mercy and heaven because of the God that filled the chasm. I want to talk a little bit about religion having gurus, theologians, philosophers, and theories. They say that they have a resurrection. Some of them believe that their guru was resurrected. They say they have an incarnation, which means God becoming man. But the thing that separates and they have no answer for is the word called grace, which is God's unmerited love bestowed upon us. Christianity is a person, where religion is an organization. Christianity is a relationship, where religion is ritualism. Christianity is done, religion is due. Jesus is far greater than a religion. Jesus is God. So today I'm not asking you to accept religion. I'm asking you to accept the person called Jesus Christ and become a Christ follower. Give your life to Him. Tell Jesus to come into your heart, and welcome to the family. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. It's been real.
You got to be willing to do what God tells you